At 8 years old, Seraphina Devereaux learned that monsters did not always hide beneath children's beds. Sometimes they wore expensive suits, sat at your family's dinner table, and smiled while the people who were supposed to protect you looked the other way. Seraphina and her twin brother Gabriel had lost their biological mother when they were 3. Their father, Victor Devereaux, eventually remarried, but his new wife never truly accepted the twins as her own. Then she became pregnant. Victor was overjoyed. A luxurious nursery was prepared. Tiny dresses filled the closets. One night, Gabriel quietly asked his twin, "When the baby comes, will father still want us?" Seraphina squeezed his hand. "Of course, and no matter what happens, we'll look after each other." Neither child knew how soon that promise would be broken. Weeks later, fire tore through the eastern wing of the Devereaux mansion. Servants screamed as smoke swallowed the halls. Victor rushed his pregnant wife to safety, while Gabriel desperately searched for his twin. By sunrise, Seraphina was gone. Gabriel was blamed for starting the fire. No one defended him, not his father, not his stepmother. An 8-year-old autistic child, who had just lost his twin, was sent to a psychiatric institution, where he would remain for the next 25 years for a crime he never committed. Months later, Victor's wife gave birth to a daughter named Alara. Alara grew up surrounded by everything the twins had lost: the mansion, the Devereaux fortune, their father's protection, and the future that should have belonged to all 3 children. But Seraphina was not dead. A masked man had taken her during the fire. She survived a terrible assault and was later handed over to traffickers before eventually escaping in the countryside. Frightened, injured, and alone, she was found by an elderly woman named Madame Celeste Vale. Celeste protected her, educated her, and eventually gave Seraphina her surname. Seraphina never forgot Gabriel. She never forgot the fire, and she never forgot the eyes staring at her through that black mask. Instead of waiting to be rescued, she studied chemistry, medicine, biology, pharmaceutical science. 25 years later, the missing Devereaux daughter had become Dr. Seraphina Vale, the secretive inventor behind revolutionary pharmaceutical treatments worth billions. Almost no one knew her face. That was exactly how she wanted it, because Seraphina had never been preparing to return home. She had been preparing for revenge. At 33, she appeared at the Devereaux mansion, wearing a simple dress and carrying one cheap suitcase. Victor looked her over with disappointment. "So this is what became of you. What were you expecting, father? An education, accomplishments, perhaps a husband. You're 33. Seraphina lowered her eyes, hiding her amusement. Victor had no idea that his pharmaceutical division had depended on her patents for 6 years. Then Seraphina met Alara. Her little half-sister had grown into a beautiful, spoiled young woman who wore diamonds at breakfast and had never been told no. Their stepmother reluctantly agreed that Seraphina could stay, adding coldly, "This family has already endured enough embarrassment." Seraphina said nothing. Then Ambrose Kane entered the room. Victor's closest advisor was 52 now, handsome, immaculate, and dangerously charming. As children, the twins had called him Uncle Ambrose. Seraphina looked into his eyes and immediately recognized the man behind the black mask. Ambrose's smile faltered. "Little Seraphina," he took her hand. "You remember me?" she asked. "Of course." Her smile deepened. "So do I." Fear flashed across his face. Seraphina had found her first crack. Now she intended to break the entire family through it. Everyone assumed she needed money, so Seraphina allowed them to treat her almost like a servant. She carried trays, arranged flowers, and quietly moved through rooms where powerful people barely noticed her. But Seraphina wasn't cleaning. She was hunting. Hidden cameras appeared. Documents were copied. Old accounts were traced, deleted records recovered, and private conversations recorded. Ambrose became her favorite target. One evening, she entered his study wearing an elegant black dress and carrying his coffee. "You've changed," he said. 25 years tends to do that. "You were such a sweet child." Seraphina's smile vanished. "Was I?" Ambrose stiffened. She stepped closer and quietly straightened his tie. "You're nervous around me." "I'm not nervous." "Good. Nervous men make mistakes." Then she walked away. Ambrose thought she was seducing him. He didn't understand. Seraphina was seducing his arrogance. And arrogant men eventually talked. There was only one complication Seraphina had never planned for, and his name was Lucien Thorne. At 33, Lucien was brilliant, controlled, devastatingly handsome, and heir to one of the richest families in the world. Ilara had spent years imagining herself beside him, but there was one truth she refused to acknowledge. Lucien had never truly loved her. There had always been another girl buried somewhere in his memory. When Lucien was 8 years old, he had wandered away from his family's attendance during a visit near the Devereaux estate. A large dog became aggressive and cornered him near one of the outer garden paths. Before anyone else could reach him, another child appeared. A little girl about his age distracted the animal long enough to pull Lucien away and lead him toward safety. She injured her leg in the process. Lucien never learned exactly who she was. He remembered only fragments: long black hair damp from the rain, the faint scent of jasmine, blood running from a wound along her leg, and enormous dark eyes staring into his frightened face as she held his hand and whispered, "Don't be afraid." By the time Lucien's family arrived, the little girl was gone. For years, he wondered who she had been, then life moved forward. The memory became something private, almost dreamlike, belonging to a childhood he rarely discussed. What Lucien never knew was that the mysterious girl had been Seraphina Devereaux, and only weeks later, she disappeared in the mansion fire. 25 years passed before fate placed her beside him again. Lucien came to dinner at the Devereaux mansion, and Seraphina poured his wine. As she leaned beside him, the faint scent of jasmine reached him. His hand froze around the glass. For one moment, the dining room seemed to disappear. Rain, barking, a small hand wrapped tightly around his, and a girl's voice telling him not to be afraid. "Mr. Thorne?" Lucien looked up sharply. Seraphina was watching him. "Are you all right?" He stared at her. Something about her eyes made the old memory feel suddenly impossibly close. "Have we met?" Across the table, Ilara laughed. "My sister disappeared when she was 8 and spent most of her life somewhere in the countryside. When would you possibly have met her?" Seraphina never looked away from Lucien. "Perhaps in another lifetime." Then she walked away. But Lucien's eyes followed her. Ilara noticed. Ambrose noticed. And most importantly, Seraphina noticed both of them noticing. Later, when Lucien finally confronted her in the Rose Hall, the memory returned more clearly. "Your perfume," he said quietly, "your eyes, your voice." Seraphina became still. Lucien stared at her. "When I was 8, a girl saved me near this estate." Seraphina said nothing. She smelled like jasmine. Her expression changed, barely, but Lucien saw it. "It was you." Seraphina looked away. As she turned, the slit in her dress shifted just enough for Lucien to glimpse the beginning of the old scar along her leg. His breath caught. "My God, Seraphina!" She immediately drew the fabric closed. "Don't. I spent 25 years wondering who you were." Seraphina gave him a bitter little smile. "And now you know. They told everyone you died. A part of me did." Lucien looked at her differently now, not as Victor Devereaux's mysterious returned daughter, not as Ilara's older sister, but as the little girl whose hand he had remembered for 25 years. "I never even knew your name." Seraphina looked into his eyes. "Maybe that was why you remembered me." Lucien frowned slightly. What does that mean? You remembered the girl herself, Lucien, not her family, not her money, not her name. For the first time, something softened in her expression. Just me. On the evening of Lucien and Alara's engagement party, the Devereaux ballroom was packed with politicians, billionaires, investors, reporters, and cameras. 40 minutes late, Seraphina entered dressed in scarlet. Victor immediately confronted her. Alara told me about you and Lucien in the Rose Hall. You disappeared for 25 years, came back with nothing, and brought nothing but embarrassment. Perhaps you should have stayed in the countryside. Seraphina stared at him. Victor continued, as far as I'm concerned, you are no longer my daughter. The ballroom fell silent. Seraphina smiled. Then allow me to embarrass you properly. The lights went dark. The enormous screens illuminated. Ambrose appeared first, then Victor. Bank transfers, recordings, security records, and evidence from the mansion fire flashed across the screens, finally proving what Seraphina had waited 25 years to reveal. Gabriel had never started the fire. Gasps swept through the ballroom. Then the screens changed again. Private photographs and messages exposed Ambrose, Victor's most trusted friend, and his years-long secret relationship with adult Alara. Alara froze. Her mother covered her mouth in horror. "This is a lie!" Alara shouted. Victor rushed toward Seraphina. "Turn it off! No! I'm your father! You disowned me 30 seconds ago!" Victor stopped. Seraphina looked into his eyes. "You stopped being my father long before tonight. You chose your empire over your children." Her stepmother moved angrily toward her. Lucien immediately stepped forward. Seraphina raised one hand. He stopped. She didn't need rescuing tonight. The screens changed again, revealing how Seraphina and Gabriel's inheritance had been redirected toward Alara, while Seraphina was presumed dead, and Gabriel remained institutionalized. Victor laughed desperately. "And what do you have? You came home carrying one cheap suitcase." Seraphina smiled. The screens went black, then appeared. Vale Global Pharmaceuticals. Several investors stood. Seraphina removed the plain glasses she had deliberately worn since returning, and replaced them with the distinctive glasses recognized by those who had worked with Dr. Vale. "My name is Dr. Seraphina Vale." Victor's face turned white. "I developed Verilex, Cardion, and the Vale regenerative compound." His pharmaceutical empire depended on all three. Seraphina approached him. "You called me poor, uneducated, and an embarrassment. You disowned me tonight, and you left my innocent twin brother locked away for 25 years. Victor couldn't answer. "Meanwhile, your empire has been paying royalties to me for 6 years. She smiled. "And this morning, I acquired the debt attached to your controlling shares." Seraphina looked around the mansion. "So technically, father." She looked back at him. "You're standing in my house." Victor collapsed into a chair. The ballroom erupted as police entered with Ambrose in restraints. Alara screamed. Her mother hid from the cameras. And Seraphina simply watched. Her revenge was complete, but there was still one person she had come home to save. 3 days later, Seraphina found Gabriel sitting beside a window at his institution, drawing the same mansion he had drawn for 25 years. She quietly sat beside him. Gabriel turned. His pencil fell. "Sarah," tears filled her eyes. "Hi, Gabe." He reached for her face. "You came back. I told you I would." Gabriel nervously looked toward the door. "Are they taking you away again?" Seraphina took his hand. "No." She smiled through her tears. "I'm taking you home." 3 months later, Gabriel sat proudly in the front row of Seraphina and Lucien's seaside wedding. Before the ceremony, Lucien found Seraphina alone. "You know everything about me now," she said, "and you're still here." Lucien touched her cheek. "I didn't fall in love with the little girl who saved me. I fell in love with the woman she became." Seraphina smiled and kissed him. Then she looked through the doorway. Gabriel was waiting. 25 years earlier, everyone believed the little girl who disappeared in the fire had lost everything. They were wrong. Seraphina came home, freed her twin, reclaimed her life, and destroyed the people who believed she would remain powerless forever. The girl who disappeared had returned. And this time, she brought an empire with her.